Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's AMA. Glad that you could all join us. We really value your continued input, interaction, and support. We have some cool things to talk about with regards to various aspects of the project today. I'm going to start off with our usual briefing from the top. Herman's going to give us the strategic overview of what's happening and, very importantly, the dev progress in that regard. So I'll hand you over to him now, and then I'll have a chat with you guys about some other miscellaneous things thereafter.
Thank you, Owen. Hello, everybody. Not much from the core today. The EVM mainnet upgrade proceeds. I think will be complete in a short order. I mentioned maybe a few weeks. Last week, I think we'll meet that target comfortably. So you can expect in the next 14 days complete EVM upgrade, and this does include some version bumps on the relay chain, as well as the deployment of the EVM compatibility parachain with the minor bug fixes as identified in the bug bounty on testnet on mainnet. What we should either focus on in this AMA, in the few minutes I'll spend talking further about the Cherry project, is the ecosystem, which many of you know we decided to pause, interrupt temporarily to give space for Cherry to grow, to build up value in the Cherry core, which does allow us to make Cherry more functional, more usable, overall better adept at supporting decentralized applications deployed on it, and thus reducing costs for onboarding ecosystem projects as well as integrating existing or new ones into and with the Cherry stack. I think this is a reasonable compromise. It allows us to reduce costs while preserving the greatest value of all within the Cherry project. Ecosystem projects, especially ones that are more created to generate revenue, to produce money as a business, as decentralized exchanges, DeFi products, and others. They are certainly useful additions to any ecosystem. It does allow us more functionality, more usability for general users, let's say to transact one token for another. However, they are highly dependent on market demand. And if a business, as these apps, as these teams attempt to make their code a business, they are also subject to laws of demand and supply. So when they have a supply of whatever product it may be, which they spent however much money both creating and maintaining, but they don't have demand, and there is actually very little demand for the variety of projects already deployed and already highly adopted, let's say Uniswap, PancakeSwap, the various DeFi yield platforms that have seen very, very little activities. Now, I have specific data. I will be happy to share those in chat, perhaps a more detailed post later on, but you can take my word for it if you don't know. But otherwise, this is publicly available information. You can easily see that if you can go on any reputable DeFi lending platform, like Aave or others, the return rates on dollar equivalents stablecoins like USDT, USD, USDC, etc., is inferior to equivalent returns in, let's say, US Treasury bonds. Now, what this means, though I'm no economist, is that demand for stablecoins is so small, is so inferior compared to the supply of stablecoins, supply due to lack of use by their owners, that investments in stablecoin backed products, or vice versa, in leverage on existing stablecoins is deemed safer than possibly, arguably, the safest asset in the world, which is Treasury, US Treasury bonds. Now, this, of course, is a nuanced argument. One may say that this is market specific, that it's difficult to convert stablecoins into Treasury bonds. It's certainly difficult to leverage stablecoins and obtain dollars to spend to buy Treasury bonds, and that's all correct. Although you can certainly adjust for that cost and still come up with an answer that places perhaps slightly increased cost to the translation of stablecoins to dollars, so to buy the safest asset on earth. But that cost, even that cost, does not justify the vast difference that is the reduced yield rate of stablecoins on DeFi platforms versus the rate of return of any, even the shortest term T-bills, USD bills. And so this is one example of how you could take or measure the supply and demand of DeFi products, or DeFi, or more generally, decentralized application products. And we came to the conclusion that there is little demand, thus funding businesses that would sustain themselves with revenue, capitalized, obtained, derived from a demand in crypto, a demand in such products which they're producing, which would be help funding or help building. We've reached the conclusion that it is likely that we can easily infer that should we continue investing into these products, it is, let's say, be quite risky without using too many complex terms and complex concepts. We be going against the market, which generally, as non-speculative investors, as we must be with the Treasury of Cherry, with the Treasury of our own Cherry Labs, the incubator / venture studio backing Cherry and the Cherry ecosystem. And as business ourselves, we try to impose an economical sense on the decision you must make. And so anyway, in summary, we decided, and this was shared many times before, the reasoning has been matured also with the input of the community over months and months and months of close analysis of market dynamics and also community sentiment, which is because Cherry is located in a market which we can analyze as a whole, but it does also have some properties that differentiate it from the rest of the market, and thus it also makes sense to calculate demand locally within Cherry. So we try to do all that and reach, in conclusion, the decision to reduce spending as far as ecosystem growth due to similar, and it's not, of course, a complete argument. What I made was an example of how we can measure demand. To reach a decision to reduce spending in funding the ecosystem growth and rather building more sustainable, more longer lasting value into Cherry, such that later on investments in ecosystem, which ultimately is where Cherry will shine, Cherry will drive the largest portion of its revenue, and we do plan on expanding Cherry as an ecosystem, as a stack via its ecosystem. So we decided to reduce spending and investment there, and rather focus it onto the core, which does have this benefit of reducing cost in the long run, and integrating ecosystem, as well as facilitating onboarding, which is perhaps a parallel, but perhaps additional also benefit, and overall maintains value, captures value. I'm sorry, I'm in a very busy area. In a more stable form than the launch of a business with unknown, perhaps known, if my analysis is correct, low demand. Now that's the broadest explanation of our decisions in regards to ecosystem growth. Specifically, I've heard questions in regards to Unigate. I think I addressed them pretty thoroughly by chat. If you have any additional questions, I'll be happy to address them in chat. I'll add to the general arguments in regards to the ecosystem that Unigate as a product was complete. I would say to maybe 95%. I would say a pretty solid minimum viable product, which does include everything that it was promised to be. Though vaguely, since we try and be vague and try not to make assertions on future things where we don't have total influence over their outcome. And this includes bridging across chains, creating invoices supported by the Cherry storage module, and receiving tokens and hedging these tokens on, let's say, in favor of your favorite crypto, be it, say, Bitcoin or stablecoin. The decision not to launch it was not Cherry Labs. We insisted it should be launched. The partners that do own majority stake, the vast majority stake of this project, and are solely responsible for its management, decided against launching it. Though we disagree in principle, since it has been ready since maybe February or March of last year, we do agree with their intuition of the future, which we now know. We are less speculative for sure than business proprietors that do need to be more receptive to changes. And they certainly were, let's say, correct in their assessment that the demand for a product like Unigate would reduce as it has, as explicated, as demonstrated by the one statistic I gave you, which is measuring demand for stablecoin by their rate of return compared to the US dollar or treasury. Now, there is certainly more nuance. While the product is complete, its token was never released. The investment rounds that were scheduled never happened. The company in charge of Unigate, which we partnered and invested in, also accepted investments from other firms, be it for equity and be it for tokens. And some of these firms, including Cherry Labs, have let's say, maybe justly dissatisfied with the promises, or at least the perceived intentions that were communicated by Unigate upon their acceptance of our money, and specifically for Unigate's, our technical support. Now, as Cherry Labs, as partly victims of this ordeal, we need to make a calculation. Well, what's the best line of action? What can we do in negotiating with Unigate? Either a progression to the product or some other outcome in regards to the investment that is currently blocked or otherwise spent within Unigate's coffers, or the product that was built and never released. We reached the conclusion that Unigate's intuition was correct. The product, had it been launched in March, April, May of last year, would not have succeeded as well as it could have, let's say, if it were launched 6 months earlier. Unigate is a strong product and still is the only trustless invoicing mechanism that is cross-chain. And therefore, the value that was built in this original promise and the value that was built in the product, though perhaps a bit outdated, is preserved such that were it launched in 4 months, 6 months, a year, we could expect a similar outcome, a similar benefit to the project, Cherry specifically, and the various other projects and customers it would touch, and to the investors of both equity and tokens that will eventually be released, as it would have, we would have expected at the moment of our investment. I think that's as far as I'll go, specifically to Unigate. I've been happy to mediate this dialogue with the team and the various parties affected, which include every single one of you in the Cherry community, as you partly are a stakeholder in Unigate as an extension of Cherry Labs, as an extension of its position within our ecosystem. I think that's it. That's all I'll say about Unigate. That's all I'll say about the ecosystem. I'll try to perhaps expand these thoughts in written form, but otherwise I'll be happy to accept your questions, relay answers from the Unigate team, and perhaps investigate myself if you have any comments or suggestions if a better line of action could be adopted. with that, I thank you all. We'll chat again next Wednesday. Goodbye.
Thank you very much, Herman. That was very insightful. Pretty complex topic, but I think we are showing the community that we are approaching this as constructively as possible, that it is still prospectively quite a beneficial endeavor to Cherry. So that's still good. And what I'm going to do is, because that was a very detailed description of the different strategies at play, I'll get that summarized, and I'll probably post it before 9 a.m. UTC tomorrow in the chat, just so that people can have a read over it if they like. But yeah, that was pretty interesting. I'm hoping that we'll see good returns in business terms for the Cherry project and ecosystem through Unigate. But yeah, rest assured, I think the right decisions are being made. Aside from that, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things that are happening, especially given the strategic situation of the project, which Herman described, in terms of continued progress on various counts on the development side. I personally think that it has been quite fortunate that we focus more on the core value proposition of Cherry. That's probably going to fuel the impending kind of ramp up of business development and marketing activities. I think that we'll have more to bring to market as a result of this strategy, and yeah, it should stand to us in the near future. So just bear with me there for 1 second. I got to get my notes up. I'm going to talk to you about some of the other things that have been going on. I myself, unfortunately, have been pretty sick the past few days, which slowed me down in some respects on some of the things that too. If you're waiting for a reply from me or something like that, then please bear with me, because I'm just getting back up to speed with everything going on. But in the meantime, I can tell you what's being worked on by the project as a whole. Just bear with me. I need to get these slides up. So in the past 7 to 10 days, we've taken our time to finalize some of the question marks around what we want to do in terms of the partnerships and marketing that we intend to do over the next, let's say, 6 weeks to 12 weeks. To a certain degree, this all hinges on what happens on the development front, but to a large extent, that's the uncertainties in that regard have been factored out to a large degree. Aside from that, from my own perspective, we've also been looking at Cherry's web presence, which as we've said before, needs sharpening up. So I think very soon what we're going to see is a dramatic increase in terms of our social media activity. Our website will be out very soon, in a matter of a couple of weeks, I think. And we're going to further engage with the kind of content that tends to do well, which is interacting with other projects and also publicizing real world events and meetups and stuff like that. So that will start over the next couple of days. It's good that so many of you bared with us in the meantime. But as I said, we will have more in-person events as well. So that's going to happen. I'd say I'll be talking about that maybe in the next AMA, but probably a little bit sooner. Everybody's coming back from holidays, so now it's a good time to do these kind of events. So we'll be doing them mostly based around Western Europe, but even further afield. We've kind of been planning these kind of things behind the scenes, in putting a bit of work into that over the last couple of months. So I think over the next 7 days, it's going to be a good opportunity to share with you the fruits of our labor, so to speak. So I'm looking forward to that. And as part of that, we will be pushing out those investor letters and newsletters that I mentioned last week. So, with regards to the overall plan of action for the next couple of weeks, you'll start to see that kick in over the next 7 days. And thank you all for your continued support. Later on this week, I'll be talking about the marketing in a bit more detail on Telegram, but I'll publicize when that's going to happen in advance, so you know when it's going to be in the channel and stuff like that. So I'll do it by text, and I might even do a short AMA of sorts, but you'll have plenty of warning, plenty of notice that that's happening in advance. Okay, so our AMA is kind of run on a little bit longer than expected. Sorry if we threw too much content at you, but it will be summarized, and that should be posted in the Telegram chat by about 9 a.m. UTC tomorrow morning. I'll work on it this evening before I go to bed, and then I'll have another look when I wake up, and then we'll send it through over to you guys, so you can kind of in a more maybe digestible form, especially for people who maybe their first language is in English, for example. And we wanted you guys to be able to share in the thoughts of the CEO as well. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there, guys. John is going to administer the quiz, and I'll talk to you all on the various social channels over the next 24 hours or so. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.